Hello, hello, hello. I am your host, OCL, and welcome back to One Century Later. Today, we'll be taking a look at all events from June 15th to June 21st, 1925. As with last week, all of my sources are in the description down below. Monday, June 15th, 1925. After shoveling, packing, and chipping away over 500 tons of ice, Roald Amundsen and his crew were finally ready for another takeoff attempt. However, cracks had started to form in their makeshift runway, including several which were up to 10 feet wide, which could ruin their attempt. At 9:30 p.m., the crew began their takeoff, with Riser Larson as the pilot. Despite the cracks threatening their attempt, the seaplane was successfully able to take off. As Amundsen would later recall, the scraping noise stopped. Only the humming of the motor could be heard. At last, we were in flight. After an emergency landing on the ice on May 22nd, and weeks of being stranded, they were finally in the air. Tuesday, June 16th, 1925. The train derailed in Hackettstown, New Jersey, killing 47 and injuring 23 after a storm washed debris onto the train track. After taking off the previous day, Roald Amundsen and his crew arrived in Svalbard, Norway. The N-25 seaplane landed near the Hinlopen Strait. They found shelter in the calmer waters of a small bay. After gathering driftwood for a fire, Riser Larson spotted a ship on the horizon, a small seal hunter cutter named the Sjolv. The team got back in the seaplane and taxied to the Sjolv, where the crew greeted them, fed them, and agreed to tow the N-25 back to Kings Bay, where they had taken off from on May 21st. Wednesday, June 17th, 1925. The Geneva Protocol, officially called the Protocol for the Prohibition of the Use in War of Asphyxiating, Poisonous, or Other Gases and of Bacteriological Methods of Warfare, was signed by 38 nations, banning the use of chemical and biological weapons in war. However, it would not go into effect until February of 1928. At 11 a.m., gale force winds in Svalbard, Norway, forced the crew of the Sjolv to find shelter in Brandy Bay. At 8 p.m., the Sjolv was finally able to begin the 2-day trip of towing the N-25 seaplane to Kings Bay. Thursday, June 18th, 1925. The Reichsgericht, the Supreme Court of Germany, struck down a law that would have confiscated all the lands of the Dukes of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. This controversial decision would remain one of the main political debates in Germany for the following years. Robert Marshall, an African-American coal miner from Utah, was lynched by a mob of 1,000 men. Marshall had allegedly murdered mine watchman James Burns. While on his way to be placed in jail, the mob stole the car he was in and drove it to a farm. Police were able to pull Marshall down from the tree, but the mob realized he was still alive and tried again. The second time, the rope snapped Marshall's neck, killing him instantly. 11 members of the mob were arrested, however, they would all be freed after posting bail on June 30th. Friday, June 19th, 1925. German engineer Walther Bauersfeld received German patent number 415,395 for the geodesic dome. Because of the dome's design, it was able to withstand heavy forces with respect to its size. Bauersfeld had applied for the patent in 1922 for use in the roof of the Zeiss Planetarium, which opened in 1926. Also on this day, bank robber Everett Bridgewater and 2 of his accomplices were arrested in Indianapolis, Indiana, after robbing 6 banks for a total of almost $100,000. Saturday, June 20th, 1925. After being arrested the previous day, Everett Bridgewater would enter into a guilty plea and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Also on this day, Benito Mussolini began what he called the Battle for Grain. Italy was in the middle of a wheat shortage, so Mussolini began advocating for the use of other grains, such as rice, in dishes, in an effort to free Italy from the needs of importing most of its grain. And finally, on this day, Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier of World War II, was born in Kingston, Texas. Sunday, June 21st, 1925. The Revolutionary Youth League in Vietnam was founded, marking the beginning of communism in Vietnam. And that is all. See you next week for all events from Monday, June 22nd, 1925 to Sunday, June 28th, 1925.